And I thought, well, that's too much. Personally, I really wasn't prepared to risk that sort of money.
You knew exactly what you wanted as the output for your final programs, or
well,
did you really change around a lot?
Both. And the structure was a way of booking out photographs, or there's a system I'd got manually.
Yes.
And I wanted to retain that.
I see, so you converted your manual system as near as possible to this, so it
exactly.
wasn't strange.
Exactly.
That's sensible.
But at the same time, you kept coming up with ideas that things you could do. I mean, for example, here we've now done the delivery note. In the old days, you'd also have delivery note, but it says at the bottom, do you want to print that? We've done them, so you press that. And do you want an address label? Well, yes. So it'll now do a thing that says, photographs do not bend, and there's your address. Admittedly, it's on ordinary paper, you have to cut it out and stick it on, but I mean, it's not too much hardship.
What difficulties did you get into programming it?
Not. It was a little bit difficult to start with, as I'd not met it before. And inevitably you come across the occasional bug.
What about all your accounting? Surely you could have bought standard packages rather than write your own.
Yes, but they all got sort of ledger and daybook and purchase ledger. I mean, I honestly, I'm not an accountant. I haven't a clue anything about accounting at all. And my accountant tells me, he says, look, keep a list of what comes in, what goes out, and let me know. This all accountancy program which I wrote.
Again, which you wrote yourself.
Yeah, and which doesn't involve any accountancy terms at all. And it just sort of says make an invoice, pay and a cheque. It's as simple as that. Oh, no, I'll show you, look. There we go. That's a listing, which is about 25 pages there, I suppose, and...
What, about 1,000 instructions?
Probably, yeah.
Of course, the bigger the program is, the more you end up by having to maintain itself wears out, but your needs change, VAT might change from 15% to something else, or you get multiple levels of VAT. How do you cope with that?
But you're quite right. I mean, if you change a line here and you accidentally forget that a certain variable had a certain value, and you change a line number, the whole thing can just go to pieces. And it does take a long time to patch it up. After
you've got the system installed and it's running and working, you're happy with it, what's been the benefit to you?
Oh, many, but I mean, I think the biggest thing is that it's given me so much more time to do other things. I mean, the things that matter, like actually going out to cricket grounds and photographing cricket.
Well, it's clear what benefits Patrick E got out of installing a microcomputer. With us today we have Ian Trackman, who wrote most of the software for the series. Ian, would you recommend a businessman to go about it the way that Patrick did?
No, certainly not, I wouldn't. Leaving aside the time it takes to get to that proficiency of programming, to be able to write a commercial program, which must be several months, it still must have taken Patrick weeks to write that program.
And then there's all the problems of maintaining it afterwards.
Yes, if you were to cost that up in real cost to his business, he must be better off buying a package. Now, a couple of years ago, maybe package, but today, there's no doubt we could have found a package that would have done the job that he wanted virtually to his absolute requirements. And that, of course, is a very important thing. We must say to his credit, he did have a very clear idea of what he wanted the program to do, which is probably the most important thing about putting a business application onto a computer.
Well, we seem to be recommending that a businessman should go out and try and find a package to suit what he wants to do. But how does a businessman go about selecting a package?
Well, there are a number of sources that he can go to, but I would think that perhaps the most logical sequence would be, first of all, to get the trade magazines and start reading through and seeing what packages are available. Most of them run a reference list of one sort or another. Then from that they would move to the dealers, the people who supply both the hardware and software, and try out one or two of these packages. When they feel reasonably happy with some of them, to ask the dealers to for a list of those people who are actually using them, not a specific. These are a number of people that are using them. Try them and see what they feel about them. In addition, of course, he could go to an independent consultant who would not only try and select the right package, but also try and clarify the ideas as to what it is he really wants.
And he might obtain information from the manufacturer, or if it was in a specialised area, for example, a travel agent or a dentist or so on, to go to his association who could recommend users like that.
But there is one thing, Mac, if you don't go to a specialist, you should be warned that there's an awful lot of rubbish around, rubbish software.
How do you define rubbish software?
Well, I suppose we ought to be more specific. It's not just, when you buy a package, it's not just the program. Besides the program, there's the documentation, which explains how to run the program, how to make changes, if the circumstances of your business change. And there's also the question of support. going back to the software house or the manufacturer of the software for help when something goes wrong.
And training, I expect. So any one of those areas that's bad, you would define that as fairly rubbish.
Yes, I mean, it's easy enough to have a look at the documentation and see if you can follow it. The program itself is a bit harder to tell whether that's badly written, but there's a couple of small tests you could try. Often a business package will start out by asking you to enter the date. Put in 31st of February. Just see what happens, because if it accepts that, then you've got troubles down the line. And another thing is, when, for instance, the program asks you to put a disk in the disk drive, leave the door of the drive open and see what happens. If it comes up with a message like CDOS error, that's very unfriendly, and I wouldn't recommend a package like that.
So we've gone out, we've found a piece of software we wanted, we've gone to a consultant, he's recommended it, we've gone to somebody else who's actually using it, we've got our software. How do we go about selecting the hardware?
Well, I think the most essential piece of software is to make sure that that piece of software works on the piece of hardware that we like. So that's the first thing. Secondly, that the piece of software, that piece of hardware should be able to grow with the user so that he can add other things. And thirdly, that the piece of hardware should have the largest possible availability of commercial software so that it can use any piece that he wants.
How does he measure the benefits once he's got his hardware and software? How do you measure the benefits as a consultant?
Well, it's very difficult to measure benefits, which is why I always leave that element to, as much as I can, to the client. But there is efficiency, and how does one measure efficiency? There are certain basic applications where it's relatively easy. For example, if you're collecting your money, if you've got your sales ledger on a computer, you can measure quite easily how much quicker the money is coming in because your statements are going out very much faster. There's that sort of application. But as I say, in terms of efficiency, it's very difficult to measure what efficiency is.
Well, thank you, Colin. Thank you, Ian. Well, next week we'll turn to how a computer can be made to make music and to speak to us. We'll also start to look at languages other than BASIC and enter the world of artificial intelligence. Until then, goodbye.
To accompany this series, the BBC has produced a book for use with the cassette-based British Broadcasting Corporation Model B microcomputer. The pack costs £12.95 and is available from bookshops and micro dealers.